Greetings and welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. As an extension of my Instagram page, Cerebral Women, this podcast offers insights into the visual art world. I interview artists, mainly artists of color and female artists who will freely articulate what inspires their creativity. In addition, you'll hear interesting perspectives from dedicated art professionals who work with artists and the art institutions that feature them. I'm confident that collectively, these individuals will indeed stimulate your mind as they do our eyes. Please know these interviews are conducted in my Manhattan apartment, so please forgive the background sounds of city life. Welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. This episode features Paris-based collector Elliott Barnes. A Los Angeles native, he is passionate about art, and 13 years ago he founded the Barnes Contemporary, a private collection based upon portraits of his family members. A unique, ongoing project, Elliott supports artists from the African diaspora by commissioning subject-specific artworks. The primary objective is to establish a private collection of figurative and occasionally abstract art that reflects the history and aspirations of an American family with African heritage. The historical context of portraiture and its association with power and privilege is crucial to understanding the importance of the Barnes Contemporary Initiative. Artists featured in his collection include Kentura Davis, Noah Davis, Yo-Yo Lander, Alvin Armstrong, to name a few. As important are his professional accomplishments. With a bachelor's and a master's in architecture and urban planning, in 2004, Elliott created his own interior design firm in Paris. His design projects include private residential properties, retail and institutional spaces, hotels and spa installations in France and abroad. His many notable projects include a visitors and reception center for Champagne Bilka Salomon in France, the new Taiping showroom in Paris, the Ritz-Carlton Palace in Wolfsburg, Germany, and a sterling silver limited edition collection for Christoffel around the theme of champagne, which is currently exhibited at the Museum of Art and Design in Paris. His design talent has been acclaimed by magazines including AD France, Elle Decor, and Architectural Digest, to name a few. Wallpaper magazine selected him as one of the 300 American design creatives to know in 2023, and one of the 400 American creatives to know in the Tastemakers category in 2024. Elliott Barnes is considered one of the top 100 interior designers in the world. Please visit cerebralwomen.com for his expanded bio and enjoy this episode featuring collector Elliott Barnes. Elliott, welcome to my podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
When did you discover your interest in visual art?
Well, my interest in visual art probably started before I knew how to spell visual art because my mother, who was super progressive, put me in art school when I was, I think, 5 or 6 years old. So I would go to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art and take art classes. And so it began there, I would say. And I think she was just doing this to offer me things that she didn't have a chance to do herself. And that then slipped into a lot of different forms, even doing classical dance and then modern dance for a while. And then I would always draw. And then I would always go to the museums with her and look at paintings, and we'd have the Sunday museum outings. I think it probably started when I was 5 years old.
Why did you start collecting? What was that inspiration?
I've always collected works of art. I think the first piece I bought was at university, small etching. It's in an apartment here in Paris. And it was always a little bit more serendipitous for a number of years, and then some fortuitous meetings with people like Claudia Gould, who used to run the Jewish Museum, introduced me to artists really, who were doing very, very impressive works, guys like Andrée Serrano and like Kiki Smith. And then I met Andrée Putman, who oriented me more towards Black artists or African American artists. And so with all of that kind of happening around my head, 2012, I wanted to give a gift to my mother, which was a portrait of all the men in the family, because we don't do girls. That's just biologically, I don't know how that works, but that's how it works. And so I needed some help and some guidance. So I went to my friend D and I said, "Dad, I'd like to do this project for my mother." And he knows my mother. And I said, "Would you help me? And who should I address?" And so he thought about some artists and he said, "I think you should go and talk to Contour Davis." And so I went and met with Contour. I took my son and we had a very nice lunch. And she agreed to do portraits of the men in our family. So she came to the house and took photos of us all. And my mother was there. And I felt my mother was kind of sad because she wasn't having her photo taken, right? Because the deal was to take the pictures of the men in our family. So I gave Contour the poem If, which was the poem that my father had us all learn when we were young. And I had my son learn it. My brother had his sons learn it. And that became the text for her to do her work. And unfortunately, my mother passed away in December of 2012, and Contour finished this series probably in January, February 2013. So my mother never saw it. And so I felt a little bit guilty that here I'd done, the men in our family, but then what about the women in our family and what about my mother? So I talked to my friend Edgar Arsenault, who had already done a piece for me in Paris, because I designed a jazz club here in 2007, and I wanted to have one of the curtains on the stage done by Black artists, because jazz is this Black art form. And so thanks to D. Harrison again, I brought Edgar in. And so Edgar did this very wonderful piece for me that's still in the club today. And so I called, and we became friends after that, and I'd go see his shows in Vienna. And so I called Edgar up, and he did the portrait of my partner then, my wife then, and my sister-in-law. And I was still struggling with someone to do my mother. So I was actually acquiring work with Michel Papillon in Los Angeles at that time. And I talked to Michelle about the project and my dilemma. And she said, "Look, let me talk to Noah Davis." I thought, wow, that's pretty ambitious. And, we'll see if he's interested. So she spoke with Noah and she said, "Look, Noah's interested. Why don't you call him up?" So I called him up and he said, "Why don't you come to the Underground Museum," which was really down the street and around the corner from where my parents' house is still. And so I met with Noah and with Karan, and I told him about the project, and we talked about it, and I said what I wanted to do, and he said, "Sure." And so he did this. I gave him the support material, and he did this really incredible portrait of our family, which was not the request, right? The request was to do a portrait of my mother. But Noah, in his genius, understood that my mother had done in the 70s, maybe it was 80s, she had a very classical portrait done of the four of us in our family. She was in a high backed wing chair. My father was behind her in a suit and tie, and I was on the right side. My brother was on the left side in a suit and tie. And this was a photograph, right? So now we're talking about something this is fundamental Americana. And Noah tapped into that, and he understood that energy, and he said that's what he painted. But he blurred the faces of the men and detailed the face of my mother. So all of the visual energy goes to the face of my mother, and that's why it's a portrait of her. It's a brilliant piece. And after I'd done that, and I learned a lot from Noah about how to be a good patron of the arts. And we'll talk about that perhaps a little bit later, I don't know. And I thought, well, what if we start doing other members in our family, right? Just kind of document that. And then I thought, well, I live in Europe and I've lived here since 1987. And you can go to a lot of homes here and people have, these are now palaces, right? And people have always done portraitures and family portraits. And then there are all these portraits of these very staid people in all kinds of traditional garment. And so I says, "Oh, this is my great uncle and this is da-da-da-da." And I thought, well, if the Medicis can do that of their family, why can't I do that with my family, right? So why can't I just do portraits of Black people done by Black artists? Because the Medicis did portraits of white people done by white artists.
So on that note, what are the characteristics of your collection?
So the collection is large. There are two parts of it. One, there's sort of large pieces. Some are abstract, some are landscapes, some are photographs, some are objects. I'm not a big sculpture person, but I have a couple of pieces of sculpture. The core collection, the Barnes Contemporary, the core of that is the portraiture collection, where I have a base of photos that have been taken that I've collected over the years or brought together of different members of our family. We don't have a big family, and I asked artists to paint a picture of my son or of my cousin or of my Uncle Carl or of my grandmother, just because if I feel that I need to document them. And I look around at different artists and I look at what artists like. And I meet them or I don't meet them, and we talk on the phone, and I ask them to do a portrait. The core of the collection is portraiture.
What type of relationship do you like to have with artists?
Good question. A relationship that I have with anyone else, which is a relationship that is honest and passionate and truthful. I'm not looking to be their friend. It is not about me being a fanboy, even though I am a fan of them, and I love them and do that. But this is a client-artist relationship. It's a commissioner-artist relationship. So I try to create a situation of confidence and trust, so that they know that they can do whatever it is they want to do. And I try not to get involved. So I don't micromanage them. When they're doing the work, I don't call them. I don't ask for updates. In fact, the verbal contract that I established with them is that if you agree to do this work, I would like to, let's say, have my cousin painted. That's the next person we're going to do. So if you're okay with that, that's fine. I will give you a lot of support photos. That's fine. It's not one photo. You'll get maybe 10, maybe get 5. And then I would like you to paint her in any way, fashion, style that you feel at that moment. We should agree on a size. We should agree on a price. We should agree on a time schedule, more or less. And if you need a down payment, here's a down payment. And I think it's always a good idea to have a down payment, because artists, they're doing work for you. And, and I do work for people, and everybody should get paid, right? So I give them a down payment. And I basically say to them, call me when it's finished. That's it. And so far, that's worked rather well, because I don't want to have an update, because I know myself as a creative. If I start to see it, then I'll start to get involved with it. I'll start to think about it. And that's not good, because the artist has not finished their work. They've not finished their thought process. So if you're showing me something halfway through, that means that you're asking me for approval, but I'm not capable of giving you that approval. And then I start to make it mine. And I don't want to do that. I want to give them a space in which they are totally free to do whatever it is they want to do. And it's up to me to appreciate that at the end. And what one artist said to me, she was a little bit worried. She said, "Thank you very much for the freedom." But she said, "Well, what if you don't like it?" And I said to her, "But that's not your problem. It's mine." And it's true, right? I want them to be great. That's what I tell them. I said, the requirement of this exercise, whatever comes out, is I want you to have a great time, and I want this to be a memorable experience for you, and I want greatness. That's all. I want you to be great.
Do you consider yourself a patron of the arts?
I'm not really sure what that means. This is a very private collection in a way. No one has really seen it yet, except for a few people. I consider myself to be passionate about art, and I like to support artists. This is a very egotistical exercise. Let's be honest, right? I mean, it is, and I'm not. And a lot of the portraits are of me, and it's not about me. It's about the other members of the family. But this is a very egotistical venture. So I don't know if I would say that I'm a patron of the arts, and I think it's for the community to say that. It's not for me to give myself that title.
Do you hang art throughout your house? Do you have art in your restrooms, kitchen?
So let me explain this to you. Living spaces in Paris are smaller than living spaces in the United States, unless you are living at the president's house or the prime minister's palace or something like that, or in an embassy. So paintings are on every vertical surface in my apartment, except for one, because it's a closet, those doors open. But I'm thinking about ways now to fix paintings on those doors. And if there are no vertical surfaces, they are leaned up against the wall. And I have 3 pieces that are leaned up against the chimney. and things are sitting on shelves. So yes, there is art throughout. There's art in the bathroom. There's art in the kitchen. It's everywhere.
So early in our conversation, you referred to yourself as a creative. Please elaborate. What do you create?
So I designed for Christophe a series of three objects, which are, it's a champagne set. One is a large champagne bucket. Another one is what the French call a seau à champagne, which is a smaller one bottle champagne bucket that's now being shown at the Decorative Arts Museum here in a larger show with Christophe, which is a huge honor. And then I designed a saber, which is what Napoleon's cuissard used to open champagne bottles when they were going through Europe, especially in Russia. And so that's a way to decork a champagne bottle with your saber. I am an architect, trained as an architect. I'm licensed as an architect in California. But since I moved to France, I've done exclusively interior design and then furniture design and object design. So I am a designer, creative, but people like to categorize, right? That's what humans do. And so if you say you're an architect, that means that you can do this thing. If you say that, oh, you are a designer, an interior designer, that means you do interiors. If you say you're a designer, that means that you design objects. If you say, or maybe you design clothes. If you do all of those things, then what are you? Because I also design rugs, and I just met a man this afternoon who wanted me to design a wall finish for him. I did a wall finish for Bical Salmon and for Ruinard using grape skins and linen and hemp to make a paper to put on a wall. So when I do that, am I an architect, an interior designer, a designer? So I prefer to say that I'm just a creative, right? Because I think what's important in life, whatever it is you do, is to have an idea. And to have an idea and to execute that idea with passion and with your heart as if your life depended upon it, really. And I tell the kids that work for me, I said, when you do these projects, I really want you to live the project. And when you live a project as a creative, that means that if you have to design a door handle or a screw, then you design the bloody door handle and the screw, right? If you think that you are just an interior designer, then you just do the interior design and you go home. But if you're not concerned and worried and sweating the details, then I think you're not living the project. And then I think you're not being creative. And I think then you're not having ideas.
Do you feel Black art can be defined?
My question to you is, do you think Black art should be defined as Black art?
Art shouldn't be defined.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's a great question because, and my answer is probably going to upset a lot of people. I think that, and this goes back to what I was saying about categorizing, I think that art is art and artists are artists. And whether you're black, green, purple, yellow, do the bloody art, make something beautiful, touch people's souls, right? Whatever that is. Now, Miles Davis and even Herbie Hancock, when people say, you're a jazz, he said, I'm a jazz trumpeter. I said, I'm a trumpeter, I'm a musician, so stop categorizing me as this one thing, because when you do that, you start putting people in boxes, and then you start identifying them as that, and then you can separate them from a greater collective experience. And that has to stop, because when everybody needs to participate in this very large collective, in this very large community that we have, in this very large thought process, in this very large creative process, in this very large artistic process that we have. And, you need to stop. We need to stop saying, oh, you're a classical musician, you only do that. Or you're a jazz musician, you only do that. Or you only do pop. Well, you're all musicians, right? You're all using the same 12 notes to do things. So let's kind of get over that. An artist of African-American descendancy or our African descendancy, they paint, right? Now, I know why, and I know why I'm doing this collection, and this might sound contradictory. I'm doing it because there's a great, what the French say, déséquilibre, imbalance between the visibility that Black artists have gotten over historically compared to white artists. And that's a fact. And I see this collection, and I see what I'm doing as my small contribution to trying to put things back into balance so that we can, at some point, walk into a museum and have art done by a lot of different people and not worry about the color of their skin, but just worry about the quality of the work that's on the wall. That's what will carry the work that these artists have done, right? And we can talk about how that relates to abstract art as opposed to figurative art, right? Because if you walk into a room, right? So you walk into a museum show and you see a portrait of a guy on the wall with his ear cut off. So it's Vincent van Gogh. And so you get it's a portrait of him. So you understand who he is, right? If you walk in and you see a portrait of a traditional portrait of of a black model, you're not really sure if that person was, the painter was black or white, right? If you walk in now to a contemporary show and you see a portrait of, my son on the wall, you would probably assume that the person that did that portrait is black. So there's that relationship. That's kind of, and I'm trying to get to a point where when people walk in to see the show or the works, they will really think just what a beautiful piece this is. Or maybe it's a piece that they don't like, which is fine too. What I find stimulating about abstract art is that you walk in and you're not thinking about who did it. You're just dealing one-on-one with that piece. And I find that stimulating. So yeah, black art exists, but I think we need to I want us to sit at the table, right? I want to sit at the middle of the bloody table and not at the corner of the table because it's black art.
Have you ever viewed art as an investment, purely for investment?
No. I mean, let's be honest. You think, I paid you this much for it. You're happy if it makes, if it increases in value, but that's not what's motivating me. What's motivating me to do this is to do something that has not been part of the black community, right? Which is to document our family, right? There are a lot of black collections out there, and then there are some amazing collections out there where people putting together are people that look like me. But to my knowledge, there's not been a collection where they're only doing their family members, right? So that's what's driving me is to leave this to my son, and hopefully he will continue to add to this collection. So the reason why I don't see it as an asset is because none of this is for sale. I'm not a real collector because I don't buy and sell work. I buy it and I hold on to it and I hold on to it. I'm not a hoarder, so let's not, don't get afraid. But I don't buy and sell work. I don't sell the work to buy another one, right? I buy it because I love it. And sometimes it goes to storage and then sometimes it comes out. So I don't do it as an asset, as an investment.
A lot of the work, I assume, in your collection is figurative work. Do you collect abstract work also?
Yes. I acquired 3 years ago, a really beautiful piece by a Nigerian artist. She's from Cameroon. Her name is Ngozi Shomers, and she lives in Bremen in Germany. And I acquired a rather large charcoal on paper drawing that she made called "The Square Is All We Have." And it looks like a bunch of vegetables done in black and white. And Ngozi is the core of her work has to do with women's hair. And because she's from Nigeria, the way women braid their hair has these sort of patterns to it. So when you look at it, it looks like a lot of vegetables because of these rows. And in fact, it's not. The name of the piece is called "The Square Is All We Have." And it's a vision from overhead of women in a square, a public square, and all you see is their heads. And it's an incredibly powerful piece because it talks about a lot of different things, and that's kind of a big push toward in abstraction. But then I have this piece from Willie Cole, which is a textual piece that I like, and I have a really nice charcoal piece from a guy named, he calls himself Kalsu, but he's Kimar. I have a really nice abstract piece from him, and I have a nice thing from Patrick Alston. So this is an interesting story because going back to commissioning. So Patrick does abstract work, and I was really touched by his work, and I asked him if he would do a work for me. Now, this is a collection that is portraiture, right? So I can supply photos. And I said, I'd like you to do it. But he said, I don't know how to do this. And so I said, but maybe we'll just talk, right? And I'll talk to you and you talk to me and you get to know me. And based upon our discussions, what if you do a work? And he said, okay, never done that before. Let's try it. So we had a series of rather lengthy conversations, and Patrick is a lovely man. He's super knowledgeable. And we had this talk, and he made a piece for me called Exodus, which had a lot to do with me leaving the United States and coming to live in Europe 38 years ago. So I'm excited to take this kind of commissioning exercise to the abstract territory by talking with people. I did a piece with Alana Clark because Alana Clark does a lot of work with hair glue, and it's about her identity. And I talked to Alana. I said, I like what you do because when I was younger, I would go to the barbershop and I would have my hair processed so my afro would be bigger, right? That's what people were doing. This was the 70s, and I had to have a big afro. And my mother would take me to the barbershop, and they would put this chemical on my hair, which would burn my scalp. And it was really, really painful. So I could be part of the fashion thing right at that moment. And so Alana and I connected over this idea of like, the traumatism that we, I think as individuals, but also as Black folk, go through to ascribe some kind of norm defined by somebody, the things we do to our bodies. And that was our connection for this abstract piece that you did for me. It's a thing, right?
It is.
But you have to think, it's identity, right? I mean, I think it's important for us, right? And I think we need to understand who we are. We need to identify, especially with what's going on now in the States.
Well, the Afro was a very rebellious move. I had mine, yes, and it was a rebellious thing. What do you feel is the purpose of art?
What is the purpose of art? I don't know when art became art. When did someone decide that art was art? When did art shift from a way to communicate an idea, a way, a thought, something to avoid, to becoming something that had a little bit less function to it? When did art shift from a thing where people just documented family life and documented communal life into another kind of expression? Art is important for me, at least, because it takes me to a space where there are no boundaries. It takes me to a space where there are no real rules. It takes me to a space where I let someone touch me in very profound ways. So for me, it's a very personal kind of exchange with a work. And my relationship to a painting is very, very different than my relationship to a space or to a building. And my relationship to a painting is super emotional, right? And I'm not an artist. Even though I'm an architect, I don't get sculpture. I just don't. My son gets sculpture, but I just don't get it. It doesn't touch me the way paintings do. Maybe it has to do with texture, surface, light. I don't know.
I was going to ask you that question. Are you starting to incorporate more sculpture or ceramics into your collection?
No. And I don't ever want to close the door, because that's not right. And if I ask an artist to do a work for me and they come back with a ceramic piece, what are we going to say? Like, no, thank you. So I don't want to say that, I would never do that. But for some reason, it's not my interest. What will be interesting is for me to come back 50 years from now, see where my son is taking this collection. Maybe he's going to add sculpture and ceramics to it, which will be fine. And that's great.
I have enjoyed our conversation very much. So based on your desire to build the Barnes Contemporary Initiative, what is your role as a collector of fine art?
What is my role? So again, as I said before, this is a super egotistical exercise. There's something my dad said to me when I was little. He said, you can do anything anyone else can, as well as they can, if not better, if you want to and if you try. And that was said to us. If it was said once at the dinner table, it was said 50 times throughout my childhood, throughout my brother's childhood. And I think the point of this collection is to say that if the Medicis can do portraiture and document their family and leave that to society, then I can too. And if I can do this, then my message is to other young collectors that you can too. And we can all do this in a way that we contribute positively to a collective experience as individuals on equal footing, and not as, one person doing this and another person doing that. It's funny because I didn't say this before, but when I was younger, I did a lot of painting, and I would paint figures, and I'd paint them kind of without faces in this very neutral skin tone, because, I guess part of the trauma that I suffered racially in Los Angeles in the 60s and 70s was always being seen as someone different. And I kind of wanted everyone to look the same, so that we wouldn't talk about our differences, but we talk about our sameness. And I think what I want this collection to kind of do is to talk about, is to say that, okay, right now it's about Black figures, but by Black artists. That's to gain a foothold so we can talk about sameness.
Well, I appreciate what you do. Thank you very much. I'm sure listeners will welcome the opportunity to view your collection, the Barnes Contemporary Initiative.
It's been really fun. Great questions. Very thought-provoking. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.